Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us on today's webinar on why you should consider incorporating your business as a physiotherapist. My name is Cleanna O'Donoghue, and I'm the Director of Business Development with Alpha Wealth. Today, I'm joined on the meeting by my colleague, Nick Charalambous, who is the Managing Director of Alpha Wealth, and also by Niall O'Sullivan, who is Principal Accountant with Common Sense Accounting. Just, I suppose, to mention a little bit about Alpha Wealth before we kind of kick off the meeting. We are a financial services company and we are based in Little Island in Cork, and we also have a small presence in Dublin also. And we have been dealing as financial advisors and planners with many professionals over the last number of years. And for the purpose of today's meeting, physiotherapists who have come to us with the question on whether they should consider incorporating their business. So hence the meeting today. We are going to keep it to a strict 20 minutes. And just to make it as informative for everybody on the meeting, we would ask that you use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen to ask the relevant questions. We are going to launch a poll as well, so please just answer the 2 questions on the screen. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Niall to introduce himself. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for inviting me here today. Niall O'Sullivan is my name. I'm a qualified accountant with the CPA since 2002 and an auditor since 2009 with the CPA. Common Sense Accounting Limited is a bookkeeping company, and our firm, Niall O'Sullivan and Associates, completes the audits. We're based in 93 O'Connell Street in Limerick, and we also have an office just opened recently in Killarney in 82 New Street. Currently, we have 6 employees and we're actively hiring, and our services include company audits, company accounts, sole trader accounts, outsourced financial controlling, and recently we just took on fund accounting in partnership with Zedra Trust Company, which are based in Guernsey. So we've plenty going on.
Great, Niall. And I suppose just to start off, can you give us an idea of the pros and cons for a physio that is considering incorporating their business?
Yeah, I suppose let's start with the cons and get them out of the way first. If they are cons, really, I suppose you've got an additional setup cost of €500, excluding VAT, but the savings should far outweigh any costs involved in the setup of the company. It's a simple process, and with ourselves, that would include CRO fees and everything else. And I suppose the other one is that there is additional paperwork and responsibilities than what you would have in a sole trader, to do submitting accounts with the CRO and things like that. I suppose on the pro side, you've got the protection of the corporate veil, which is really important for shareholders if the company became insolvent for any reason. You've got the protection of the limited company if there was ever an action taken. To a degree, you're less exposed to your assets within it. You've got the lower tax rates. Currently, it can be 20% for service companies, but it's against, I suppose, a tax rate of 52% if you're self-employed and you're earning good profits. You can also claim things like travel and subsistence if you're traveling for any reason, whereas as a sole trader, it's just on a receipts basis, but you'll never get an allowance for meals and stuff. The company name is also protected with unlimited existence. Nobody else can use it, essentially. And I suppose from my point of view, I would suggest that there's a cheap entry cost on that front. And I suppose one of the other big ones is the company pension benefits. That's probably more your area of expertise, Nick, to be honest with you there on that front.
Yeah, hi everyone. I have to say, having set up a company 9 years ago, one of the benefits for me personally, and also for physios that I have spoken to, is that it does allow you the ability to fund a pension much more aggressively than if you're in a self-employed or PAYE situation. The limits are much greater. And also there are other benefits such as putting protection policies through the business. So personally, one of the main advantages I found is that I can get the company in a different vehicle to fund some of my financial objectives, which are, my retirement and trying to plan for early retirement, as well as insuring myself and my family for things like life insurance very cost effectively, and also very tax effectively, and other provisions such as income protection and so on. So it's really a way of using a different vehicle to pay for things and save on the tax break.
Niall, I'm just going to ask you another question around kind of what level of income do you think a physio would need to make incorporation attractive to them?
Absolutely. I suppose it starts with the level of profits. They have to be sustainable as well as everything else. And you're looking at every situation being different. But I suppose from a personal income point of view for the owner, you're looking at the cutoffs, and you're looking at 36,800 for an individual. You're looking at 73,600 for a married couple. With if the main earner is the only person in the business, 45,800 is the figure. And that's the 20% cutoff rates. After that, I suppose it's also the fact that there is a lower tax rate, which makes it attractive outside of the actual income element. And just one other point while you're on that, it's just to consider it, if the business is owned by the individual, you may keep the business out of the company as well. But from a threshold point of view, profit-wise, you're looking at, I would consider anything over 30,000. You have to start thinking about it seriously.
Okay, and what are the costs associated then with this? I know you mentioned one earlier, but around 500 euros, but is that the only cost?
Generally, that's the major cost, and it's the responsibilities then around the reporting and stuff like that, which the accountant has to take care of and take responsibility for, really. But 500 euros is the major cost. Every situation is different. There may be transfer of assets and different things like that, but in general, that's what you're looking at.
Okay. And I know, Nick, you mentioned about kind of pensions briefly, but what about pensions and insurances, and what effect does this have?
Well, just to maybe reinforce what I said earlier, many physios would have taken out policies from the point of view of, income protection, for example, and their life cover insurance as well. And really, for me, I would suggest very strongly that by incorporating, you can put these plans into the company. The company pays for them. There's no BIK, benefit in kind, typically with a lot of these. But the biggest one is the pension. And I'm not trying to push pensions on people today, but people really should take advantage of the fact that it's a really tax effective mechanism. If you think about it, you get tax relief at source. So if a company is formed, the company's saving the 12.5% corporation tax. So it's a way of reducing profits. But more importantly is that the pension fund grows tax free. Now, there's a couple of figures I'd like you to take away from today. The biggest one is the fact that all of us in Ireland, however large or small our income levels are, can grow a pension to a size of 2.15 million. Now, it seems like a huge figure to maybe some of us, but it's a very achievable goal for people who work very hard in their company, which I presume a lot of you would be doing, and that want to remunerate yourselves and not pay too much in tax. So if you think about it, someone who's in their 30s or 40s, funding a pension by reducing the salary that they draw, they will more than likely get close to that figure. And it's about trying to make the most of what you can. The other figure I'd like you to take away from this is that people often ask me, well, what's a good pension plan? And I say to them, well, realistically, for people in this sector, 800,000 is the figure that I would suggest that you aim for. And if you don't know what that looks like at the moment for your current funding, it's worth just considering. And the reason why that figure is used is that that's the maximum amount which will allow you to take the 25% tax-free cash of 200,000 euros. And the remainder, the 600,000, should suffice as a very, very reasonable income in your retirement years.
Thanks. Niall, this is probably a question for you again. If one of the physiotherapists on the call here today already has an accountant who has advised against incorporating, what would you say to this, or what advice would you give?
I suppose, firstly, everyone's circumstances is different, and you've got to bear that in mind at the beginning, and this is general advice. It's always worth exploring an opportunity where you can save money due to tax rates or for whatever reason, there are other benefits, as Nick's just pointed out, like company pensions and stuff as well. So it costs nothing to go and look and to have a chat and to see if there's an opportunity there for you. There is also, I suppose, for a lot of physios who your time is your profit. You don't have a material cost to put against it. And in this case, any profit you're making at a rate of 12.5 or 20%, depending on if it's service, it's still far better than 52%. And you've got the added advantage that you're saving preliminary tax of the same amount again as well. And that can be significant, you know, in the bigger scheme of things.
And if anybody on the call here today, I don't see any questions in the Q&A yet, but please, if anybody on the call wants to type in a question, please ask it. If anybody wants to make contact with you, Niall, what's the best way to contact you?
And I'm happy to take a call from people on 087-983-9761, or also by email niall@csal.ie.
And what I can do is we'll send out an email following this meeting anyway. Perfect. To give the contact details for both Nick and for Niall.
Just if I could jump in for a second and to give people an opportunity maybe to ask a question. Really what we wanted to try and maybe reiterate is that we're here to try and give advice, and some of you may already have accountants, and from personal experience dealing with Niall, it's about getting advice, sometimes independently, just to try and either reinforce what you're thinking or maybe even challenge perhaps something that's been said. But it's certainly opened my eyes to, you know, opportunities for physios, and having spoken to some physios in the past who have incorporated, I really feel that it's certainly an option, which is why we set up today. There is a lot of information available. Alpha Wealth's website does contain a few videos that, you know, helps people in terms of planning financially for their future, including, you know, as I mentioned earlier, about trying to map out, you know, the financial provisions for the future. And it's not just about pension provisions, but also other things about how to pay down a mortgage early, how to become financially free, help children through third level education and so on. So there's a lot associated with it, but it's really about trying to reduce some of these personal costs that we all bear. And a lot of people might say already, well, I have life assurance, I have income protection, you know, I have a pension. It's not about having the product, it's about who's paying for it. And it's about making sure that you are utilizing the opportunity. So if you think about it, if a company takes up the cost of income protection, it releases a personal cost that you have yourself. And it's worth checking in with an independent advisor, in my opinion, at least every 2 years. So for anyone who hasn't had a call, I think it'd be worthwhile.
We have some questions now. So the first one is, I always thought the revenue were not in favor of a sole trader converting to a company. Has this changed recently?
Never been an issue, to be honest with you. Revenue would have no issue once you're paying your taxes, once you're making your declarations. And I've never heard of a situation where they've disagreed with you incorporating. It happens most businesses, once the profits become any way high at all, they tend to incorporate, and that's the advice I'd give any client who's making large profits, and it's never been an issue.
Okay, I hope that answers that question. And is there an age limit beyond which it is not practical to incorporate?
From my point of view, I suppose whether you're 21 or 61, as long as you're practicing, for me, it's fairly black and white. It comes down to what taxes you're paying, and in a legitimate way, reducing those tax liabilities and having an exit plan then through your pension or whatever else to extract money as efficiently as possible.
Okay, great. Thank you for answering those. Another one, what amount would be reasonable to pay an accountant for doing business accounts for a company of 2 to 4 physios?
Again, it's very hard to give a fee. Every accountant will probably have their own charge out rates and everything like that. It depends on your sales, it depends on the volume of activity that you're involved in, and it depends on the level of work that the client is doing. Are they doing the bookkeeping themselves or not? But I would have said that the starting price is probably between €2,000 and €2,500.
Okay, great. I think that's it with the questions. Nick or Niall, do you want to finish off with anything before we close it up?
I might just raise one point that we probably haven't covered here, and it probably will be a question at some point, is with regards to employees, if you're transferring from a sole trader to a company, it's important to understand that the employees don't lose their rights or obligations. It's called continuity of employment. They still keep all their rights. They still are employed from day one. They're just transferring everything over into the company when they're being employed there.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for that. Oh, sorry,
if I
Nick.
could just maybe add further to it as well. I suppose really what we've tried to get across today, guys, is that it's definitely worth asking questions, and please do feel free. We're going to share the video with you for some of you I know who may have entered after the start, but there are always looking at opportunities. I mean, for example, I know in my own business, you know, employing you know, a partner, for example, if your partner is involved in the practice, these sorts of things where you can start pension provisions, it's worth looking at options and exploring. And I'd say to all of you that you've obviously taken the time, and we do appreciate you taking the time today to come on the call. And for those of you that are listening to this on playback, don't be afraid to come out and just ask questions. There's no obligation, there's no cost to you of getting advice from us at this point, certainly. And I'd like to speak up and say, you know, Niall is proficient in what he does. It's a great company, and we've worked very closely over the last number of years. And, you know, that's really the main message, I suppose, for today.
So I think on that note, we'll probably end the meeting here, and just thank you all very much for joining, and have a wonderful Easter and enjoy the break. Thank you.